Hi everyone, welcome to today's podcast of Commerce Shop. Here we talk about technology trends and AI about for manufacturers and retailers. Today we are discussing about manufacturing workforce crisis, inspiring the next generation of makers. Joining us today is our guest Terry Iverson, a manufacturing leader with more than 4 decades of experience. He's the former president and CEO of Iverson and Company for 42 years, is currently the founder of Champion Now, is an author and a keynote speaker, and he is dedicated to encourage students to view careers in manufacturing. Today, let's talk about the workforce gap in manufacturing and how we can change the perceptions. Welcome, Terry, to the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you. So, Terry, you have spent close to 4 decades in manufacturing. How you see the industry today? How serious the manufacturing workforce crisis in the industry now?
Well, the manufacturing workforce crisis is real,
Mm-hmm.
and I started in manufacturing in 1980, so going on 46 years now. And there was rumbles back in 1980 that people would kid me if you sell me a machine and a programmer or an operator with it, I'll buy two. That type of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
so over the decades, it's gotten significantly louder in terms of the voice of we need more skilled workers, and now it's getting to a very very dangerous level. So Champion Now is actually an acronym that stands for Change How American Manufacturing is Perceived in Our Nation. So it's the longest acronym ever.
Mm-hmm.
But we try to change the perception so that young people will be inspired and encouraged in these opportunities, especially when a college education is just in some ways out of reach financially for a lot of people, or just not the right fit educationally for certain people.
Mm-hmm. Do you think this crisis is because of the perception of the students, or is there a skill shortage? What do you think about?
Well, one of the things that I would say is that Oldsmobile in the 1980s, way back then, came out with a saying that it's not your grandfather's Oldsmobile as a slogan. And so a lot of people will, look to that to make a comparison. And I say that this is not your grandfather's or your father's manufacturing. And it's
Mhm.
not. And there's been at least a generation and a half that have thought that manufacturing isn't good paying, is boring, too many rote mechanical tasks, and there's a lot has changed predominantly because of computerization.
Mhm.
A lot has changed because of automation, and now AI is going to change everything, but it's going to change manufacturing. But the changes in manufacturing with AI are going to be slower. There's going to be a lot of professions that people are banking on, and AI is going to change those professions so much so that manufacturing is quietly sitting over here, and not enough people know about it as being a lucrative alternative.
I understand. Do you think with champions now that you're educating both parents and students, where do they get or they misunderstand about the modern manufacturing?
Well, it's not that people, parents and students alike, are making conscious decisions about no to manufacturing and yes to everything else, but they
Mm-hmm.
simply don't know a lot about it. There was a 1982. There was a book by I think it's John Nesbitt, I believe, that was
Mm-hmm.
called Megatrends, and it was exactly at that time. I remember hearing the scuttlebutt in the media that the U.S. was going to become a service-based economy, and that was something that he said in that book. And so, whether it was true or not true at the time, or true going forward, it almost became a self fulfilling prophecy in that people thought that way, and so people grew up, had kids, and took that along at least 1 to 2 generations. And so our industry's done a poor job of being our own promoters and our own advocates about these good paying jobs that are now becoming, with overtime and with benefits, extremely good paying jobs. And with automation and computerization and CNC technology, they become even more fascinating, interesting. And the thing I talk a lot about is we have so many gamers in our world. I
Mhm.
believe last count from what I read, we had 3 billion gamers on this planet. And there's a digital connection between CNC technology and programming and the digital world of gaming. There's a very close connection there. And so not very many young people have witnessed that. Let's put it that way.
Understand. So if manufacturing is strong and it is now easier, and there is, I believe there is a, a decent salary and strong, that I don't think they need a 4 year degree right now, correct? For to get in manufacturing.
They don't. It's not that you don't need education, and this is kind of the whole point to a lot of convincing. If we can just educate and inspire both parents and young people, is, there's a lot of college education that a 4 year degree could cost you easily anywhere from $250,000 to almost $500,000 for an education. And there's a lot of certification and 2 year degrees and training that many employers will pay for good, committed, young, skilled, workers,
Mhm.
employees. And so when you look at the return, I have a term that I have in my book called return on education. And that means that the job that you're getting and the skills that you need, that you're paying a reasonable amount or having someone else pay for that
Mhm.
to enter into a profession and a career that will pay well. But then when you take the cost of the education, you need to consider that, because you could be spending way more than you need to get a really good career.
Yes. So is parents making decisions for young children that they think it is not, because though there are a lot many changes happened on the manufacturing side, like
Mhm.
robotics and everything, is parents still in thinking about their old mindset? It is a boring job, so they are the one steering away the kids, in your opinion?
Well, I think not enough young people, Satish, knows the career set and the industry offering that exists, or the supply and demand. I mean, we're about a 500,000 skilled manufacturing workers in this country, about a 500,000 short. And from
Mm-hmm.
now to, I think it's 2028, we're going to be 2.5 million, almost 2.5 million workers short. So when you look at supply and demand, I always tell young people, I said, if I have this ticket to this playoff game, whatever sport you choose, and it's the only ticket that exists, or very few exist, what's going to happen to the price of this ticket in the marketplace? Everybody says the same thing. It's going to be very expensive. Well, that ticket is a metaphor for a skilled worker. So they're going to have 5 offers or 10 offers, whereas in a more conventional career set or profession, they may have 100 people they're competing for one position. So
Mm-hmm.
the opposite happens. Supply and demand. You got to oversupply, and what ends up happening is the price goes down. So overtime is a really big entity, because there's not enough workers in the workforce in manufacturing. So overtime becomes very much offered quite frequently, and a lot of the employees take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm. With champions now, what grade you mostly influence, like teaching about this? Is it mostly middle grade or high school? What grades you try to influence? What
Well,
grade level?
we started something called Camp Champ, which is obviously alluding to Champion now again. And what we try to do is a pop-up manufacturing camp, and we use high school manufacturing students to mentor middle school students. So we try
Mm-hmm.
to teach them, how to make a pen out of wood using CNC technology for turning, how to assemble it, how to inspect it, how to sand it, stain it. We teach them about laser engraving on a nameplate so that the pen can go in a box and their name can go on the box. So
Mm-hmm.
we try to teach them that, but at the same time, mentorship is extremely important and not as well embraced by the next generation. And so we try to have the middle schoolers uh, being mentored by the high schoolers, and then from the adjacent school, the feeding school, the middle school that goes to that high school. So maybe the following year they're in the high school hallway and they actually see one of the mentors that taught them about manufacturing. So we
Mm-hmm.
also try to we're trying to develop a farm system. So from 12 years old to 65 years old and everything in between, we try to get the technical colleges. Sometimes we'll have the camp at the technical college, and then
Mm-hmm.
we'll try to get employers involved. So the employers can look at maybe internships for the high school students. The high school students are looking to or the middle school students are looking at the high school students maybe to learn more about manufacturing and the education that school might have for that. And then of course the technical college, they're trying to be a resource to the high schoolers for that next level of education in manufacturing.
Mm-hmm. So with these kind of camps that you're building, how much do you see a success rate? Like, is kids getting excited about it, or what is their experience after going through this kind of an experience, like pop-up camp and
Well,
everything?
for every 100 young people that we get involved,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 7 have heard the word manufacturing or have any concept. And to be fair and honest, they come in pretty much indifferent, not knowing what the camp, what the experience is going to be like. And so when we're done with the camp, which it's an inspiration and informational camp, we need more information, and it's not an education that they're getting in a 2-hour time frame. But usually after that standpoint, we go from about 7 young people out of 100 to about 50 to 60 young people that are like, what is this? I've never heard of it. I don't know anything about it. And so it really is an inspiration for the young people. But if we just stop there, and this is the important part, if we just stop there, they would run home, show the pen to mom and dad, show them their name laser engraved and that they assembled the pen themselves. And mom and dad would say, nope, I want you to be a doctor. I want you to be a lawyer. I want you to be an accountant. And so one of the things that I did is this second book is for the parents. This is the parent edition,
Okay.
about getting a debt-free career. And then on the other side is the student edition. So
Wow.
this book specifically is so that when they go back home, all jazzed up and all excited about CNC and all jazzed up about making things, that mom and dad and student have the stories, the data, the salaries, and the reasons why they should at least listen to their child and maybe give it some thought collectively.
Have you seen any aha moment with kids? When do you think have you felt, yes, manufacturing is something I try to pursue? Have you seen anything with the middle schoolers or high schoolers? Any aha moment, something like that?
There's a lot of, well, one thing I have noticed is with the high schoolers. Now keep in mind, the high
Mm-hmm.
schooler mentors, they're already looking into manufacturing. They're already considering manufacturing in many cases, in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
So what I see an aha moment for them is that this is one of the first times they've mentored anybody. They may not even have ever experienced mentorship themselves. And they like it. They're like, this is kind of cool that I can teach something to someone younger. And so what that means is there's a shortage of CTE teachers, vocational manufacturing type instructors in our country. So this is a potential breeding ground or starting point for some of those high schoolers to look at careers in teaching manufacturing to high schoolers. The young people in middle school, they come in and you see some of them, like clapping and jumping up and down and getting, pretty excited. When they walked in the door, they were very indifferent and just kind of looking around like, okay, what is this I'm attending, or what am I going to? So you do see a lot of, on our website on championnow.org, we have pictures of all the young people and being engaged in all the different camps. And you can see that they're very intent, they're very engaged, and in many
Mhm.
cases very excited and inspired.
I understand. And one thing is about you educating it. How do you think the manufacturing companies are they working towards and changing the perception of manufacturing? It is made more modern now. Are these companies doing anything to change the perception?
There's a lot of there's a lot more strides that we need to have from the general manufacturing sector.
Mm-hmm.
There's leaders and early adopters and people that have been doing it for a long time, and there's more people, gaining momentum to get involved in advisory boards and volunteering for us and financially supporting us. Um, so there is momentum, but there's just not enough people doing what needs to be done, joining their local high school advisory board, doing internships.
Mm-hmm.
Internships is an awesome way to get young people exposure to a lot of things, but manufacturing in this particular case. And even if a young person does an internship in manufacturing and doesn't think it's for them, that's okay. We're still gaining, double digit percentages of exposure, and there's still way more people after an internship going into manufacturing. So I think that there's still a long way to go, but there is momentum. And another thing I should mention is Manufacturing Day. Manufacturing Day is, I believe, the first Friday in October every year. Um,
Mm-hmm.
myself and others close to me were involved back in the 2012, 2013 timeframe when Manufacturing Day was a concept by FMA,
Mm-hmm.
Fabricator and Manufacturers Association. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's something that people should be more involved in, is Manufacturing Day, where families can come in and actually see manufacturing companies in their community, what they do, and learn more about the trade.
And do you think the manufacturers should also think about like how they acquire customers? Should think about attracting talents, build a program around it. Like I know they have the apprentice program, but they have to do a lot connecting with the schools close by. They have to do those kind of things
They
a
really
lot.
do. I mean, that's how I got started.
Mm-hmm.
Harry Mosier started the reshoring movement. Harry was a friend of mine, and when he
Mm-hmm.
told me he was going to, reshore, coming back to the country for manufacturing, I said, Harry, where are all the workers going to come from? And
Yeah.
so through conversation, and Harry's been just a huge, huge advocate for manufacturing in our country to come back, and for young people to go into manufacturing careers. But yeah, we need more momentum, and there's a lot more engagement needed. There are a lot of manufacturing programs opening back up in schools, and that's something that was needed. Apprenticeships, the apprenticeship model in this country, which is infamous in Germany and Switzerland and other European countries, that's starting to make a comeback as well.
Okay. Do schools also needs to be opened up? Like they should also focus on these kind of things. Like they should connect with close by manufacturers. Should they to close this gap? It's not only manufacturer. They also should open up, in your opinion, or they are ready to accept if manufacturer reaches out to them.
A lot of manufacturing companies are very slow to get engaged at schools because industry moves at light speed. And now with
Mhm.
AI, it's going to move at even faster light speed if there is such a
Mhm.
thing. And education as a whole in our country does move way, way, way slower.
That's true.
So the mindset that I would encourage manufacturers is yes, you need to get involved with your local school, whether it be a technical college, a high school, or even a middle school. Get on an advisory board, but understand it's the long game. It's not the short game.
Mhm.
Offer internships of high school kids, high school students coming out. That can be more of a short game. But the more you invest in the educational process with an open mind that it is going to take time, more time than what you're used to in your own business, right? And if
Mhm.
you set your expectations and start developing those relationships with administrators and leaders in the high school and the technical college and the middle school,
Mhm.
you'll get there, but it'll take some time, and you have to adjust your expectations, right from the get go.
Mhm. Do you think any country who's doing this well, like uh, trying to create those kind of manufacturing apprentice, building more candidates to get influenced in manufacturing, any country is doing that?
Well, I talk about Germany and Switzerland extensively because
Okay.
first of all, their culture is way more. They hold makers and manufacturers and skilled tradespeople in very high regard in comparison to how we do in this country. For some
Mhm.
reason, we think people that make things or go into manufacturing are something less than other professions, which is
Yeah.
simply not true.
Mhm.
But even in Switzerland, I mean, if you go into, I've been in a lot of companies in Germany and Switzerland, for example, and they'll usually have about 10% of their workforce. If they have 200 employees, they'll have 20 apprentices, and the apprentices are paid, in the apprenticeship program. And the more education they get, the higher pay they get, and that they're awarded with. And for the most part, a lot of them stay at that company. Some leave and go down the road, so to speak, but a lot of them stay. So there's definitely Europe, but even with everything that they're doing with their culture, that's very accepting and very with a high degree of honor with makers and skilled tradespeople, they still have shortages too. Even with everything they're doing right and their culture being very accepting of manufacturing, they're still having shortages as well. There was a comment by one of the leaders of the German American Chamber of Commerce in Chicago that said Germany has the system, i.e., the apprenticeship model and the culture, but they don't have the people. In other words, their population is on the downslide. I think they have 90 million on its way to maybe projected to 80 or 70 million going forward. The
Mhm.
US has the people. We have 330, 335 million. It's supposed to be fairly consistent, but we don't have the system. So if we can emulate what they're doing in their culture and what they're doing in their apprenticeship model and acceptance and honoring the skilled tradespeople and manufacturers and makers, then I think we will start getting a lot of things, hitting on all cylinders, so to speak.
I understand. Let's talk about AI. I think with introduction of AI, many people would fear that there is going to be a job loss. That's what at least being projected in mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
So how people think about it specifically in manufacturing industry, is that a real thing that AI is going to take the jobs? Does manufacturing address those fears, or because they don't want to get in a career which AI can replace in next few years, correct?
Yeah, there was a young lady that I was speaking to in her class in introductory to engineering for females. It was
Mhm.
a female specific class, and she said, "Mr. Iverson, I'm going to be in school 3 more years, and then depending on what I do after high school, even longer. How can you guarantee me that what you're saying will be still in its current state?" And I
Mm-hmm.
said, whoa.
Yes.
I said, that is an excellent question. I can't. But what I can say is that AI is going to affect everything we know. It already has in many ways. And
Mm-hmm.
there's so many professions that like if someone crunches numbers and data entry, so much of that stuff is going to be automated and in many cases has already with AI.
Mm-hmm.
But so many other professions, what they need and what they're getting in terms of employees and workforce is like somewhere in this range. In manufacturing, we're like this. We need this many and we're getting this many. So we have a lot of catch up no matter what happens. Manufacturing has a lot of catching up to do. AI will augment some of it. Automation will augment some of it. But bottom line is we're still going to need the critical thinking and the analytical skills and the repair skills and the diagnosis skills and all these things. Maybe one day, long after every other facet has been automated or AI has impacted, uh, we'll still be looking for quite some time because of the deficit we have to begin with, more so than other careers. There'll be a lot of good things that will be changed with AI in manufacturing. Um, but I think there'll be a lot of other professions that there's potentially young people studying to get into certain careers that may are changing so quickly that they may rethink, is that what they want to go into, whatever that may be the case.
Understand. The other important thing is the physical AI. That's the big thing people are investing in. Specifically, you know about Prometheus, which Jeff Bezos has started up a startup like that is going to make the manufacturing, creating products much easier.
Mhm.
How do you see that, and how is it going to make an impact in manufacturing world?
Well, I think one of the things that that we fail to realize, and it's not mentioned very often, is that there's a huge entrepreneurial element in manufacturing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that get into manufacturing and they start their own companies, make their own products, invent their own products. And so that's one element that's rarely, if ever, going to be impacted by AI, because that innovation and that creativity to look at something that's been learned and take it into a company that didn't exist, and take your expertise and offer it to the world, so to speak. But that being said, there's no doubt that we have adopted automation in this country more slowly than say Europe has. Just automation, but even before AI. And so I think what's going to happen is that there'll be a lot of enhancements that AI will offer in programming and streamlining processes. Um, the rote mechanical loading of machines has been something that has really been not a very attractive profession, because that is something that can be automated. So I think there'll be some humanoid type robots at some point, loading machines where we have 6+ axes articulating robots that aren't humanoid loading machines. I think that'll be replaced by more humanoid type robotics and AI. So it's anybody's guess, but I still contend that we have so many gains that are necessary to become competitive in the world market, or more competitive in the world market, that it'll be interesting. But I think that we're going to need some of that to even compete or keep up. But there's a huge loss in the U.S. Looming if we can't get more products made somehow, some way, either with AI, automation, or more of a skilled workforce. But we're always going to need people to take the analytical component of, I need to set up a different part, program a different part, diagnose a machine failure, or so forth. So there'll be a lot of other tasks that'll be automated before those type of tasks.
I understand. Like, how do you think the maybe in 2025 a manufacturing role would look like? A manufacturing worker, what kind of task you'd be doing, how it will look like?
I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be more of a need for higher level and higher skilled employees, and
Mm-hmm.
so and there's going to be more of a rapid advancement from an entry level up until a managerial or decision making level,
Mm-hmm.
because that the critical thinking of uh, how to make a product meet a demand, whether it be a price demand or a timeline demand or a innovation demand. And so that being said, I think it's going to take some time for us to figure out, what the niche is, but the end result is that higher level and higher skilled and higher critical thinking skills are going to be a requirement in manufacturing, because all these inputs have to be managed, and decisions have to be made uh, to make it all make sense. And every factory and every product is different.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, like for new high schoolers to join, like what skill do you think they should have to get a better or a great future in manufacturing? What skill they should start developing when they are in 12 or 15?
Well, I think the first thing is there's a couple things. One is that the soft skills are very lacking in today's market.
Mm-hmm.
So people showing up on time, people showing interest and being curious, people asking questions, um, and trying to really become a sponge of knowledge. Um, Communication skills, communication with the advent of technology, with phones and presentation and actual communicative working in teams, has suffered because of technology. And so young people, I try to tell them that, you've grown up with a cell phone in your hand since you were probably 5 years old. It's probably your parents' phone at the time, swiping, looking at pictures or videos, but you need to have those interpersonal communication skills. I think the soft skills, the communication, but then I think also there's definitely a need for not only mentoring and being mentored, but then also reverse mentoring. Some young people are not real excited about someone my age or either younger or older, mentoring them because they can't find relevance because of the age gap. And so what I try to tell young people is, there's such a thing called reverse mentoring, where your technology skills or social media skills are so more advanced than someone, your dad's age, your mom's age, or your grandparents' age, that you can actually reverse mentor them too. So it becomes more of more of a level, even playing field, and they feel valued because they're giving back, the opposite way. I also think that the critical thinking, taking a problem and being able to come up with a solution and working in teams, I think that's going to be equally as important when a young person enters the workforce.
Do you think this technology will make it now attractive for this Gen Z and Gen Alpha kids to take up this manufacturing
I do.
career?
I do. I think, I made the comment earlier that, the digital element that they've grown up for, and let's face it, the computerization and the gaming and all that has been around for quite a while now. So we have a whole generation that basically has been living in that environment. And now computerization and CNC manufacturing is through my 40 years was in its infancy in the U.S. and now has become a mainstay. And so the unfortunate thing is that young people and parents, they don't know that. They don't know that, they have this vision that there's, these billowing smokestacks and somehow products come out, and and people are coming out of the factories looking like they've been in a coal mine with all sorts of soot on them. And
Mhm.
in reality, we have very clean environments, very safe environments, um, very challenging environments in terms of problem solving and critical thinking. And so a lot of manufacturing has changed for the better. I think it needed to change, and technology has certainly helped that for sure.
I understand. So you've been with 4 decades. When do you think that this problem will become big? Is that in the last 2 years after you quit Iverson and started this, or when do when you are working in Iverson itself, you know that this problem will come? When do you realize that there will be a manufacturing workforce crisis?
I definitely knew that it was year by year, decade by decade getting worse. I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of things, we didn't. I think, one of the things we learned through COVID and through that time period in our world and in our country is that we're way too dependent on products made outside of the U.S. So that made the general public realize, well, maybe we should be making more in the U.S. So that we don't depend on a market or a country that maybe can't be as responsive to us, or we're not their biggest priority. I think that over time, uh, through COVID and now with AI coming on, I think we're going to continually have to readjust our perceptions, our opinions, and make decisions. The one thing that isn't talked enough is student debt. Student debt is a huge problem in our country, and
Mm-hmm.
our culture has shifted. Uh, and I'm not saying that anyone that lives with their parents that's a bad thing, but our young people, as they grow up, they should be able to be debt free. They should be able to afford to be on their own, buy a house, buy a car. They should be able to start a family. But in reality, what's happened in our culture is that the cost of the education is increased dramatically more than most anything else. And so we have young people thinking that it's okay, and I don't think it is okay, to
Mm-hmm.
go into student debt. And as a result, they have these payments that they have to make for year upon year, decade upon decade, and they have to move back to their mom and dad's house, which they probably don't really want to do, and to save money so that they could pay off that debt. The cost of education, I'm not saying that we don't need education. We do. But we
Mm-hmm.
need cost effective education for young people. But most importantly, manufacturing may be the perfect fit for them because of how they're built and what excites them and what they're passionate about. But if they don't know anything about it, they'll never find it. So if we can just inspire and inform young people, and that it's on the table for discussion, when they sit and talk with their advisors, with their parents or their grandparents, there's going to be way more decisions to stay out of debt, to get an education, but a cost-effective education, or an employer that will not only give them a job, but also get them upskilled to work in the environment at their company doing exactly what they'll be being paid to do.
And the other thing that I also like in a scenario situation like this, like if there's an company CEO whose workforce about 20% is going to retire in next few years, should you think about connecting with the students and educating them, or should you think about hiring? Because if there is a shortage of workforce and the majority of his workforce is retiring, what would you advise that company CEO or the director to do now?
Well, I'll go back to my comment earlier that you need to look at the long game, and you
Mhm.
need to immediately start doing internships and set aside time for your veterans to share that tribal knowledge and that legacy knowledge that they have about your company, your products, your processes. The day when Bob would retire after 50 years of working at a company, and when Bob leaves, his knowledge leaves because you had Sue and Bill and others that had the same knowledge. That's not the case. The baby boomer generation, of which I'm at the tail end, are retiring. Some of them are passing off, unfortunately, but many are retiring. And that knowledge, employers and CEOs aren't making sure that there's a system in place in their company for that knowledge to be passed on to either a manager or an intern, whether it be a college intern, a high school intern. But there's um, the innovators and the early adopters, they're doing this and have done this for a long time.
Mhm.
But those people that are waiting or thinking that it's too costly to implement something like that, I'm afraid it's even more costly if you don't.
Mm. I think. Do you think manufacturers can afford an high salary now for these students or these young graduates? Because everybody is getting hired in tech right now. They get
Yeah.
a higher salary. So, do you think manufacturing companies can afford to compete in attracting the talent?
They can, because some of the but it's not something that just plops on your desk and happens by accident. I think one of our when I was running our family business, we would cultivate young people and we'd bring them in very young, very energetic and very open to ways of learning and understanding the culture within our company. And then over time, they would gradually move into different positions and different salary levels and different responsibilities. What's happening now, and this is good and bad, is that there was a gap of people going into manufacturing, so that you would have the 60 and 55-year-olds in a company that were managers, and then you have maybe 28-year-olds that have been into a company for a reasonably short period of time. Well, there's middle management, that young people are being slid into the middle management position with higher paying compensation, but they don't have the education and they don't have the experience to have that responsibility or the action items that would come to them off the top of their head. So what ends up happening is they're put in a position earlier, they're being paid more, but then they're having a harder time understanding and having the wherewithal. So employers need to double down and spend more money. Yes, they're going to move them into a position where they're going to be making more, but they have
Mhm.
to spend more money on different personal development and professional development for those younger people that are being put in a position maybe 10 years before they're ready.
Understand. And in case if US is not able to solve this kind of crisis next 10 years, what would be the consequence on this about about countries' manufacturing competitiveness? Will it lose it, or what would be the consequence? I think.
Well, we've lost a tremendous amount of manufacturing, and China has been our main nemesis, so to speak.
Mhm.
And we still make a large percentage of the world's goods despite that. I mean, we used to be the game, in town, so to speak, in the world in making products. Our whole middle class, back in the days of Henry Ford, when Henry Ford, did so many innovative things with the Model T and with cars and making cars affordable so his workers could afford cars. The middle class is really what this country was built on, and manufacturing was responsible for building up the middle class. So if we don't pay attention to this, we're going to have a wider spread, and the middle class is going to be thinner and thinner. And overall, that's not good for our country. Manufacturing has brought prosperity to the U.S. Um, we depend on it, and we need to pay attention to it. Thinking that sending things overseas, that's a solution, and having products made in different parts of the world, that's not necessarily good for the wherewithal for our culture and our communities and our citizens.
Mhm.
So I think we need to figure out to somehow in some way, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I think collaboration between industry and schools and education, collaboration between mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and son and daughter, or grandson and granddaughter. But I think a lot of people get into here's one statistic that I learned is that when you take 100,000 per 100,000 young people, and you take a percentage that go to college, and then from that percentage of populace, you take into account they get a degree in either 4 years or 5 years. And then from that percentage of young people, you actually say they use that college degree for their job, for their career. There's only between 7 and 13% of that whole populace of young people that actually go to college, get their degree in 4, 5, or even sometimes 6 years, and use that education in their degree, in their career. And so what we're having is a lot of families really struggling and a lot of young people struggling with debt for an education that they may be using a part
Completely.
of it, but
Yeah.
not using it to the extent where they can use it for exponentially for earning a career and a good paying wage to raise a family and pass on to loved ones.
Do you think how big would be the opportunity for the next generation if we solve this problem?
I'm sorry, say that one more time.
How big would be this opportunity for us for the next generation if you can get this right?
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge because not only does it impact mom and dad, son and daughter in one generation, but it impacts multiple generations going forward. So it's vastly important. There needs to be more of us like myself that are
Mhm.
advocating for not only change in perceptions but change in culture. And then, of course, there's manufacturers that need to think differently. We don't have enough people in the Black community or people of color in our industry. We don't
Mhm.
have enough of the female gender in our industry.
Mhm.
We don't have enough people with special needs or disabilities in our industry. And so those are exponential gains to those communities if we would embrace them and bring them into our companies and make them part of the solution as well.
Okay. And finally, one last question I want to ask is, what do you see as hope? Right, this is going to be solved. What kind of um, signals you see as this is going to be solved? Do you see anything right now?
Well, first of all, being in the manufacturing sector and the machine tool sector, I have seen a lot of schools open up um, manufacturing programs. So that's first.
Okay.
Everyone thinks that, oh, manufacturing programs are gone. Everyone closed them down. Well, at one point, there was a lot that did close down. That's true, but there's a lot of them that are starting back up too.
Mhm.
I think the other thing that I'm seeing is that if the gaming community truly gave uh, CNC and computerized and automated manufacturing a chance, I think they'd be fascinated. And when you have that many young people that are fascinated with gaming, um, being programmers in gaming, all these gamers want to be a programmer for gaming. And there's a huge demand or a small supply, but a huge interest in doing that. Well, that being said, they're not going to be able to be a programmer for games. Then the other thing that I see is there's programs. I was just involved in a program in the South in a state. We're going through a program where it's like a juvenile justice system, and we're trying to um, inform and inspire young people that are going through like rehabilitation scenario, and we're trying to teach them more about manufacturing as a way, a solution to have a good paying career and put um, their poor decisions and circumstances behind them. And so when I see stuff like that around the country happening, I think that also is speaks volumes that we just need to keep doing things like that.
And one final piece of advice for any manufacturing CEOs who is struggling with this crisis, what would it be?
Get involved.
Mhm.
Don't don't say it costs too much to to get involved and get engaged with the next generation. Um, don't think that all young people don't want to work. That's just simply not true. They have to be inspired. They have to be um, educated the right way. Not everyone learns the same way. A lot of people in myself and in our industry, they learn by actually doing things and
Mhm.
watching things being done. And they get, not only do they retain it better, but they also become inspired and excited about what they're contributing. But the cost of not getting engaged, not getting involved in education and in the next generation, the cost of not doing it is way more than the cost of doing it.
Doing it.
So don't kid yourself, I guess is my word advice.
All right. Thanks, Terry. Thanks for your time. I hope the
Thank you.
session is useful for everyone, and we'll connect with you another episode. Uh, Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to have the chance to talk to you.
Thank you. Bye.